Father Mark, who are all these masked people out here? Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you here live today. As Father Mark mentioned at the beginning of Mass, instead of just looking at the camera and the crew, it's nice to have some other faces to look at as we celebrate Mass today. And during this period of live streaming Mass, in which we will continue to live stream the 9 o'clock Mass for quite some time yet, that you always got to see us, but we never got to see you. So we're pleased that you're here today. When the stay-at-home order was first given, I don't know about you, but I thought it was just probably going to be for a couple weeks, maybe the end of March. I never dreamed or imagined that it would go through half of the Lenten season and the entire Easter season with churches closed. So that reminds me that, on Easter, I usually always told a couple of jokes at the end of Mass. So you didn't get them this year, so you're going to get them now. Do you know what you call a cow that has a twitch? Beef jerky. Do you know why Father Mark and I will not allow chickens in church? Because they only talk in foul language. But the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 virus has certainly changed our way of life. And as we begin to open our church, we must remain cautious. We are following the directives of the CDC and dioceses to keep everyone safe, and we appreciate your cooperation. Just as we begin to see our way out of one crisis, another crisis has come upon us. I suspect that some of you are hoping my homily will be about the murder of George Floyd, racism, the ensuing protesting, riots, looting, and the response of our president. And I suspect some of you are hoping I will not. Last year, on the weekend of August 18th, I preached on the sin of racism, and links to listen to that homily are on our website. This week, I put out a statement on our present situation. But yes, I am going to preach on the sin of racism today. While the topic has become politicized, I want us to look at it from the scriptural context of the solemnity we celebrate today, the most Blessed Trinity. First, we must realize that racism is not a problem just in the United States. It is a scourge on all humanity. So how and why must we address it? The peaceful demonstrations like some we have seen these past weeks do have impact on legislation and practices. I witnessed that in the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 60s when I was growing up. Dr. Martin Luther King and ordinary citizens marched peacefully for change. Congress eventually passed legislation ending discrimination. Restaurants could no longer have segregated seating. There could no longer be whites only and blacks only drinking fountains or bathrooms. Public schools were required to integrate. Attitudes began to change. I never gave any thought that some might find that my having a best friend in high school who was African American to be out of the ordinary, something that I shouldn't have done. In recent years, we have seen new legislation that sets parameters for certain crimes being prosecuted as hate crimes. And just A couple of days ago, the Minneapolis City Council voted to ban police chokeholds. Progress has been made, but it is impossible to legislate ourselves out of racism. It will never work. A person may not commit racist acts out of fear of the law, but still remain a racist in his or her heart. The only way out is by turning to and living in what we celebrate today, the Blessed Trinity, three persons living in perfect loving union as one God. We need to achieve that perfect loving union with God first before we can live it with others. John in today's gospel states, God so loved the world that he gave us his only Son. For God sent his Son into the world not to condemn the world, but so that through him the world might be saved. At the heart of the gospel, we hear that God's relationship with the world is rooted in love. It is not rooted in suspicion or condemnation. It is God's radical love which gives our world its importance and every person our essential dignity. God's love is above all the more significant because it is fully aware of the sin and the brokenness and the stupidity that are part of our lives. It is not a love that protects itself from facing the negative side of life. It is a love that faces the complexity and mystery of the real. That same truth is underlined in today's first reading when we hear God and Moses in conversation. Moses admits to the truth that the people are headstrong, with a litany of sins and faults to their name. But this does not alter God's nature of being a God of tenderness and compassion, slow to anger, rich in kindness and faithfulness. Whatever happens, God's love is never at issue. God's love is very difficult to grasp, but Jesus, one like us in all things but sin, made it real. The Son's faithful love is so great that he faced the ultimate infidelity, being put to death by those he loved. But God, the Father's love, survives the death of Jesus. God raised his Son and sent his Spirit so that we could share the very life of the love of God. In honoring the Blessed Trinity today, we celebrate the awesome stubbornness of God's extravagant love for our world. Love is the answer. But if someone has not known the all-embracing, unconditional love of God, how can they embrace others with the love that defeats the evil of racism? Love is the essential atmosphere for every child to grow in, and when that love is sure, any hardship can be faced. If parents give a child a sense of their own importance and that they are loved by God, it is much easier to be open to others. If one has grown up not believing in their own self-worth and dignity, it is impossible to have it for others. We are all children of the one God, and love is the essential atmosphere for our continued growth. We are all responsible for playing our own part. None of us can retire from the task of helping to make our family and community a place where God's love gives shape to what happens. That is why Paul, in our second reading today, encourages the divided church in Corinth. Be united, live in peace, and the love of God and peace will be with you. None of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, ever stops loving all people. God's love is sure and everlasting. As children of the one God, we never grow out of the need of his love. But neither do we outgrow the responsibility to share it with others and help others, especially those who only know violence, to experience a life-changing encounter with Jesus. It is God's plan for all humanity to live in the mystery of the loving union of the Blessed Trinity. It is a union so perfect that it is impossible for racism to even be a possibility. As I said, we can't legislate ourselves out of racism, nor can we rid it by ourselves. Only with contrite hearts for committing the sin of racism and opening our hearts to the healing love of God can we begin to see and treasure all people as God sees us, created in his image and likeness. Dr. Martin Luther King isn't the only one that had a dream. God had the dream first, that all his creatures would live in harmony, respecting the dignity he alone has given to us. God is still waiting for humanity to fulfill his dream. Let's do our part to make God's dream a reality.